He thanked her, not me, for making his life beautiful. 50 years of marriage, and that's who he looked at. That was the moment I knew I had to take back control. My name is Elaine Parker, and this is the story of how my golden anniversary became the night my marriage ended, and my life began again. Before I tell you everything, tell me, where are you watching from? I'd love to know who's out there tonight, listening to what it feels like when a heart finally wakes up. The ballroom shimmered that evening. Strings of warm fairy lights curled around ivory pillars. Soft jazz filled the air, and golden ribbons hung from crystal chandeliers. Everything gleamed. The silverware, the champagne glasses, even the smiles of guests who came to celebrate us. 50 years of love, loyalty, and life together. At least that's what they thought. I had spent weeks preparing this event, poring over old photographs, choosing songs that told our story, or what I believed our story was. Richard, my husband, had seemed distant through it all. He left most of the planning to me, saying, "You've always had an eye for beauty, Elle." An eye for beauty. The irony of that wouldn't hit me until later. When I looked at him across the room, he still had that easy confidence, the kind that once drew me to him when I was just 22. His hair had gone silver now, his face softer, but his smile was practiced, polished for crowds, not intimacy. I watched him laughing with our guests, holding court at his own celebration, and felt a quiet ache bloom inside me. 50 years, half a century of promises, routines, and compromises. And yet, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was standing next to a stranger. The evening rolled forward like a dream that was just a little too bright. Our children gave speeches, friends toasted to everlasting love. I nodded, smiled, clapped at the right times. The perfect wife performing the perfect act. Then came Richard's turn. He rose slowly, adjusted his tie, and the crowd fell quiet. He started beautifully, as he always did. Words flowed out of him like honey. He spoke about decades of partnership, about building a family and a home, about how lucky I've been to walk beside the woman who made me who I am. For a moment, I almost believed him again. But then, it happened. He paused, his gaze sweeping across the room, and said softly, "I want to thank everyone who made my life beautiful." A murmur of warmth filled the air. Glasses lifted, smiles widened, and then, before anyone could blink, he turned and looked straight at Linda, our next-door neighbor. The look wasn't fleeting. It lingered, intimate, unguarded, deliberate. Her lips parted in a small, shy smile. She lowered her eyes. I felt it like a knife to the chest. It wasn't jealousy. It wasn't even anger. Not yet. It was recognition. The final confirmation of something I'd been afraid to name for months. Every late night, every odd phone call, every time he came home smelling of gardenia perfume that I didn't wear. It all converged in that single devastating glance. And as the guests laughed and clapped, oblivious, I stood there, frozen. The smile plastered on my face, beginning to tremble at the corners. Linda had been my friend once. She'd moved into the house next door 3 years ago, widowed, younger by a decade, always eager to help out. She brought casseroles when I was ill, offered to mow the lawn when Richard's back gave out, and waved at me each morning with that bright, harmless grin. Harmless. That word used to comfort me. Now it made my stomach twist. The waiters began serving dessert. The band struck up a soft tune, and all I could think about was how perfectly everything looked, how real it seemed, when beneath it all, I was standing in ruins. Richard returned to our table, his arm brushing mine as he sat down. "Beautiful night, isn't it?" he said, smiling as though nothing had shifted. "Unforgettable," I murmured, my voice steady but hollow. He didn't notice. He never did. That night, while the guests danced and toasted, I sat silently at the edge of the ballroom watching the two of them. How he leaned in just slightly when she spoke, how she touched his arm as if by accident, how his laughter softened only for her. It was strange. How quiet pain can be. No tears, No scene, just a deep, echoing stillness. I excused myself early, telling everyone I was tired. As I walked toward the exit, the lights of the ballroom glowed behind me, golden and warm, a celebration of 50 years that suddenly felt like a lie carved in gold leaf. Outside, the night air was cool, sharp with the scent of rain. I looked up at the stars and whispered, "Not tonight," because I already knew. That night wasn't the time to confront him. I had waited too long, and now I could wait just a little longer. After all, I'd been recording everything, and that night I finally knew when to press play. The morning after the anniversary, the house felt too quiet, the kind of silence that hums with something unsaid. I sat at the kitchen table, still in my robe, watching the golden light creep through the blinds. The smell of last night's perfume, gardenia and champagne, clung faintly to my dress hanging by the door. It should have been the happiest morning of my life. Instead, it felt like a funeral for the woman I used to be. I met Linda 3 years earlier, when she and her late husband Greg moved into the house next door. She was friendly, full of energy, always with a tray of cookies or a casserole dish in hand. "We should do coffee sometime, Elaine," she'd chirp, her blonde curls bouncing as if the world had never given her reason to doubt anyone. And I did, because that's who I was. I believed in kindness. I believed in neighbors helping neighbors. I believed in friendship. When Greg passed away unexpectedly, I was the one who brought her flowers and sat with her on the porch while she cried. I remember saying softly, "You'll find your strength again. Just give it time." She smiled through tears and said, "You're such a blessing, Elaine." Funny how the devil always arrives in disguise, smiling, grateful, harmless. It started small, the kind of small that most people wouldn't even notice. After Richard's mild heart scare, Linda began stopping by more often. "Just checking in," she'd say, bringing soup or fresh bread. I was grateful, truly, at first. Then I started to see how her visits always seemed to happen when I was out running errands, how Richard suddenly started wearing cologne again, something he hadn't done in years, how he'd hum old love songs while shaving, songs I hadn't heard since our youth, songs Linda mentioned she loved during one of our backyard barbecues. Still, I tried to brush it off. 50 years of marriage teaches you to pick your battles. But one afternoon, while I was trimming the roses in our garden, I heard laughter drift over the fence. Richard's low chuckle, Linda's melodic giggle. I froze. The laughter wasn't casual. It was intimate, too light, too familiar. When I peeked through the slats, I saw them, standing close, their heads bent together over a coffee mug, smiling like teenagers sharing a secret. And then she touched his hand, just lightly, just enough. I told myself it was nothing. I needed it to be nothing. But later that night, when Richard came to bed smelling faintly of her perfume, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, my chest tight with something I couldn't name yet. Not rage, not even grief, just awareness. I started noticing more. Phone calls that ended abruptly when I entered the room, messages deleted from his phone, late-night walks to clear his head. Every time I asked, he'd sigh, exasperated. "Elaine, you're overthinking again. You've always been sensitive." It was the same tone men use when they want you to feel foolish for trusting your instincts. I learned to smile and pretend. That's what women of my generation were trained to do. Smooth the edges, keep the peace, swallow the ache. But inside me, something began to shift. Not brokenness, not weakness, a slow, burning curiosity. Then came the moment that changed everything. It was a Thursday morning in spring. Richard had gone for his usual walk, and I was tidying the living room. His briefcase sat open near the recliner, something he never did. At first, I wasn't going to touch it. I'm not the type to snoop. But then my eyes caught a small velvet box tucked inside. I hesitated, my hand trembling as I reached for it. Inside was a delicate silver necklace with a tiny heart pendant. The same one I'd admired at the boutique downtown months ago. The The one Richard said was too expensive. Underneath it lay a small receipt. To Linda Peterson. My stomach turned. The air left the room. But it wasn't just the necklace. There was a folded note written in Richard's unmistakable handwriting. Can't wait for our trip after the anniversary. Just us. Always yours are. For a long moment, I just stood there, holding the evidence of my own humiliation between my fingers. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. Something colder settled over me. A quiet, steady kind of knowing. That was the day love died in our house, and strategy was born. When Richard came home later, whistling, I was at the kitchen counter making tea. He kissed my cheek absent-mindedly. "Big day tomorrow," he said. "Don't forget we're meeting Linda for lunch." I stirred the sugar slowly, watching it dissolve. "I wouldn't miss it," I replied, smiling faintly. He had no idea that I had just stepped off the stage of our marriage and into the audience. From that moment on, I wasn't his wife anymore. I was his witness. I began to collect everything: text notifications, voice messages, photos, quietly, carefully. Because if 50 years had taught me anything, it was this: truth doesn't always need to shout. Sometimes it just needs to be seen. And the day I saw what he kept hidden in that briefcase, hope died. But resolve was born. What I found next made me realize how deep their betrayal truly went. The house never looked the same after that morning. Every corner seemed to hum with quiet deceit. Every photograph of us smiling together felt like a cruel inside joke. I'd walk past our wedding portrait, me in white lace, him in a dark navy suit, and feel like I was looking at two ghosts. The girl in that picture didn't know yet how betrayal could whisper instead of shout. For the next few weeks, I lived my life as if nothing had changed. Breakfast at 8, church on Sundays, garden on Tuesdays. I still ironed his shirts and made his coffee. Black, 2 sugars, just the way he liked it. Because I needed time. Time to understand the kind of man Richard truly was, and the kind of woman I was about to become. He must have thought I was blind, or too naive to notice the late returns and the new shirts he claimed were on sale. But I was watching and recording. I had learned from my daughter years ago how to use that tiny camera she once gifted me for home videos. It had sat untouched in a drawer until now. I fixed it discreetly behind the photo frame in our living room, its lens no bigger than a shirt button, and I waited. The first few days, nothing, just ordinary domestic silence. But one afternoon, as rain tapped gently on the windows, Richard's car pulled into the driveway hours before expected. I peeked through the kitchen curtain and saw her. Linda, umbrella in hand, wearing a blue coat I'd complimented just last week. They stood at the doorstep for a moment, speaking softly. Then she followed him inside. My pulse hammered. My palms went cold, but I didn't move. I didn't rush downstairs or scream or confront. I sat quietly in the upstairs hallway, listening as footsteps crossed the floor below. And then, laughter. That same laughter I'd heard once through the garden fence. When they finally left, I went down, hands trembling, and retrieved the memory card from the camera. It felt like holding my entire marriage in my palm. I watched the footage on my laptop, grainy, silent, yet unmistakable. Linda's hand brushing his arm, his smile, the same one he used to give me back when we still dreamed together. Their closeness, the way they looked at each other. No words needed. There it was, the truth, plain, simple, undeniable. And in that moment, something inside me split cleanly in two. The part that had once loved him and the part that now pitied him. I remember sitting there in the dim light, the screen glow flickering on my face. I thought I'd cry. I thought I'd break. Instead, I felt calm. Terrifyingly calm. It's strange how betrayal can sometimes bring clarity. It's like a storm stripping the leaves off everything, leaving behind only the shape of what was real. And what was real was that I had been living beside a stranger. The next morning, he came down for breakfast humming softly, as if he hadn't spent yesterday afternoon desecrating our vows. "Morning, love," he said casually, kissing the top of my head, the same head he'd been lying to for months. I poured his coffee. "Morning." He didn't notice how my hand didn't shake. From that day forward, I stopped being the woman who hoped. I became the woman who knew. I started documenting every pattern. Times, visits, excuses. He began mentioning business trips, claiming he needed to check on a property he managed for a client. But his cologne told a different story. One mixed with lavender and something sweet, something unmistakably hers. I checked the credit card statement one afternoon. Quiet, deliberate, methodical. There it was again. A boutique purchase. 2 plane tickets. Destination: Savannah, Georgia. Departure date: 2 days after our anniversary. The same trip he'd written about in that letter. Just us. The irony stung like vinegar in an open wound. He wasn't even clever enough to hide it well. That evening, I stood in front of our bedroom mirror and looked at myself. Silver hair falling softly around my face, faint lines etching years of laughter and worry. I wasn't the young bride he'd married, but I wasn't broken either. There was still strength in the curve of my jaw, still defiance in my eyes. And that's when it struck me. I didn't want to destroy him in secret. I wanted him to see what he'd done. If he could humiliate me in silence, I could expose him in the light. That's when the plan began to form, quietly, piece by piece. I wouldn't confront him right away, not with shouting or tears or ultimatums. No. I'd make him face himself, and I'd let the truth do the talking. I created a folder on my computer, named innocently, Anniversary Memories. Inside it, I placed everything: the footage, the receipt, the note, the timestamps. And every night I'd open it, watching the proof play out, reminding myself why I couldn't go back. Still, a small part of me wanted to be wrong, so I waited, giving him one last chance to tell the truth. One evening, as we were closing the curtains, I asked softly, "Richard, are you happy?" He paused, frowning slightly as though I'd asked something absurd. "Of course I am. Why?" I smiled faintly. "Just wondering." He went back to the window, missing how my eyes didn't hold him anymore. It took just one night for the truth to walk through my door, laughing, and when it did, I was ready. It happened on a Friday evening, the kind that begins soft and ends sharp. Rain was falling in slow, heavy drops, tapping against the window like a restless secret trying to get in. I had told Richard earlier that morning that I'd be spending the weekend with my sister in Austin. He kissed my cheek, distracted as always, and said, "Drive safe, sweetheart." Sweetheart. The same word he'd later whisper to someone else under our roof. But what he didn't know was that I never left town. My suitcase sat neatly in the trunk of my car, parked 2 streets over. And inside the house, hidden behind the floral vase on the mantel, the camera's little red light was blinking. I sat in my car down the block, rain streaking the windshield, watching the faint glow from our living room window. The house that once felt like mine now looked like a stranger's. Familiar walls containing everything I no longer trusted. At 6:42 p.m., I saw her car pull into the driveway. Linda, wearing that same blue coat, her hair pinned back, umbrella forgotten. She knocked once, twice, before Richard opened the door. Even from where I sat, I could see the way his face lit up. He stepped aside, ushering her in with a smile that used to belong to me. And then the door closed. For a few moments, I couldn't move. The betrayal wasn't new. I already knew. But seeing it unfold in real time made it solid, undeniable, cruelly real. I sat there until the rain softened to mist, gripping the steering wheel, my heart pounding so loud it drowned out the storm. Then I drove away, not to escape, but to give them time to reveal exactly who they were when they thought no one was watching. By midnight, I was home again. Their cars were gone, and the house was dark. I walked in, quiet as breath, and went straight to the camera. The memory card felt warm in my hand. My hands trembled as I slid it into my laptop. The footage began. Richard and Linda sitting on the couch. My couch. 2 glasses of wine on the table, the same set we'd received for our 40th anniversary. He was laughing. A sound I hadn't heard in years, not like that, and her laughter followed, high and careless, filling the space that used to be sacred. Then came the words that would never leave me. "After the party, she'll go stay with her sister for a few days," Richard said. "That'll give us time to talk about moving forward." Linda smiled, touching his knee. "You mean about us?" He nodded. "After 50 years, I think I've earned a little happiness." My breath caught. 50 years. The same words engraved on the invitations for our anniversary. And then, laughter again. Not cruel, not mocking. Worse. Joyful. Genuine. The kind of laughter that comes from 2 people who believe they've won. I paused the video, staring at their faces frozen on the screen. 2 people sitting in my home, planning my replacement. But what struck me most wasn't their betrayal. It was how calm I felt. No shouting, no tears, just a deep, almost frightening steadiness. That night, I realized I'd already lost the man I married. The only thing left to lose was my silence. I copied the footage onto a new flash drive and hid it in the bottom drawer of my desk. The next morning, I printed the still frame of them sitting together, just one, and slipped it into a book on our coffee table, right between the pages of The Art of a Happy Marriage. When Richard came down for breakfast, whistling, I looked at him differently, like someone studying a portrait. Beautiful once, but faded beyond repair. He poured his coffee, unaware that the walls around him now held more truth than his words ever would. For the next few weeks, I didn't confront him. Instead, I planned. I went to the event planner for our upcoming anniversary dinner, the one Richard thought was his big idea. I smiled and said, "I'd like to add something special, a short video montage, a tribute to our 50 years together." She clapped her hands. "Oh, that sounds wonderful." Wonderful, yes, a fitting word for what was coming. At home, I began curating old photos. Our wedding day, the kids' birthdays, Christmas mornings. Each image told a story of the woman I had been. Then halfway through, I added one more clip, just a few seconds long. No sound, just the image of Richard and Linda on the couch, wine glasses in hand, her hand on his knee. It would appear near the end of the video, right after the slide that read, "To the man who made my life complete." Every night, I rehearsed in my mind how it would feel to watch the truth unfold in front of everyone. Our children, our friends, our neighbors. Would I tremble? Cry? Feel vindicated? No. I imagined I'd simply breathe again, because this wasn't about revenge. It was about reclaiming my dignity, in the same light where he had chosen to betray it. When Linda waved at me one morning over the fence, her usual sunny smile in place, I waved back, polite, perfect. She had no idea that the next time she smiled across from me, it would be under chandeliers and camera flashes, moments before the truth shattered her world. That night, I didn't sleep much, but when I did, I dreamt not of pain, but of freedom. And I knew exactly where I'd find it. In the weeks leading up to our anniversary celebration, I became an actress in my own home, every smile rehearsed, every laugh deliberate. I played the part of a loving wife so convincingly that even Richard seemed to believe it. If betrayal was his game, then composure was mine. Each morning began the same way. Him reading the newspaper at the kitchen table, me pouring coffee with hands that no longer trembled. He'd talk about the guest list, the decorations, the music. Our golden anniversary, he called it, his voice carrying pride. He had no idea I was counting down to something far more golden. The moment truth would gleam brighter than his lies. "I think we should include that slideshow you're making," he said one afternoon. "People love nostalgia." I smiled, stirring sugar into his coffee. "Oh, I've been working on it for weeks," I replied. "You'll love it. It's heartfelt." He grinned, kissed my cheek, and went back to his paper. If he only knew how heartfelt it truly was. At night, when he was asleep, I'd sit at the dining table with my laptop, headphones on, carefully editing the video. I began with photos that melted hearts. Our wedding, our children's first steps, our old dog lying by the fireplace. Then I added short clips. His proposal under the oak tree, our first home, his proud smile when we paid off the mortgage. And finally, the moment of truth, the clip of him and Linda. No sound, just their laughter, their comfort, their closeness. I adjusted the timing so it appeared immediately after a slide that read in elegant gold letters, "To the love that never faded." Then the screen would go black, followed by one last message: "Thank you for 50 years of lessons." Each night I played it back. The footage no longer hurt me. It strengthened me. It became my armor. Every frame whispered, "You're not crazy, you were right." But this wasn't just about catching him. It was about reclaiming my narrative, the story of a woman who had been silenced by loyalty, but reborn through truth. Meanwhile, Linda remained blissfully unaware. She waved over the fence, brought over lemon bars, even asked for help picking an outfit for the anniversary party. "I want to look elegant, you know," she said, laughing lightly. "I'm sure you always do," I replied, smiling sweetly. She had no idea that I had chosen the color scheme, gold and ivory, and that her dress, a shimmering champagne hue, would make her stand out in the crowd just enough. Now on the outside, I kept everything polished and warm. Inside, I was sharper than I'd ever been. The planner came by to confirm the schedule. "Would you like the video before or after Mr. Parker's speech?" she asked. "After," I said softly. "Let him have his moment first." It wasn't bitterness. It was precision. I wanted his words to hang in the air, heavy with deceit, before truth cut through them like a blade through silk. One evening, a week before the event, I stood in front of my mirror, adjusting the necklace I'd bought for myself. A simple gold heart, the kind he never thought to give me. For years, I'd believed love was proven through sacrifice. Now I knew love, real love, begins with self-respect. I practiced my smile, calm and poised. I didn't want triumph. I wanted peace. The night before the anniversary, Richard seemed giddy. He poured us both a glass of wine. "Can you believe it's been 50 years, Elle?" he said, raising his glass. "Half a century." 50 years, I echoed, watching the wine swirl. "It's hard to believe." He reached for my hand. "We've made it through everything, haven't we?" For a moment, I looked at him. At the man who had once been my world, who had promised me forever and given someone else my trust. And yet, I didn't hate him. Hate gives power. I was done giving him that. "Yes," I said finally. "We've made it through everything." My voice didn't tremble, but my heart whispered, "And tomorrow we finish the journey." Later that night, when he went to bed, I sat alone in the living room, dim lights flickering over the golden decorations already hung. I pressed play one last time. Our life unfolded before me. Decades of memories leading up to one truth that could no longer be buried. When the final frame faded, I closed the laptop gently. Outside, the wind stirred the chimes, their soft ringing sounding almost like applause. I walked into the darkened kitchen and stared out the window toward Linda's house. Her lights were still on. I could see her silhouette moving, carefree, humming. "Sleep well," I whispered. "You'll need it." Then I turned off the lights, climbed the stairs, and slipped quietly into bed beside the man who had no idea that tomorrow night, in front of everyone he respected, his world was about to split open. When he stood on that stage, thanking everyone who made his life beautiful, I knew the time had come, and this time I wouldn't flinch. The ballroom glowed that night. Soft chandeliers, golden tablecloths, laughter echoing off polished walls. Our children beamed, guests toasted to love, and Richard thrived in the oimia spotlight. From the outside, it looked like perfection. But beneath the music and the smiles, truth waited quietly, patient, merciless, ready. When Linda walked in, the air changed. She wore champagne silk, her hair curled just so, her perfume trailing through the room like confidence. She smiled at me, that practiced, innocent smile. I smiled back, steady, unmoved. It wasn't anger I felt anymore. It was anticipation. Dinner passed with stories, toasts, polite laughter. Then Richard rose for his speech. He began with charm, as always, recalling our youth, our unshakable bond, the woman who made him who he is. Guests smiled warmly. I watched, calm, hands folded. Then came the moment I had waited for. "I want to thank everyone who made my life beautiful," he said, voice thick with sentiment. The room applauded. And in that instant, his eyes found hers. That one glance, soft, unguarded, full of history, told the entire truth. My stomach clenched, but my face remained a mask of serenity. When the applause faded, I stood. "Before dessert," I said gently, "I'd like to show something special, a little tribute to our 50 years together." The lights dimmed. Music began. Soft piano, our wedding song. Photos flashed across the screen. Young love, growing children, Christmas mornings. Laughter filled the room. Then the music softened. The final segment began. There they were, Richard and Linda, sitting close on our couch, wine glasses in hand. No sound, no context, just them. Their faces said everything words never could. Gasps cut through the silence. A fork clattered. Someone whispered my name. Richard's smile collapsed. His glass shook in his hand. "Elaine!" he started, voice breaking. I turned toward him, calm, unwavering. "Oh, don't stop now," I said softly. "This is your favorite part." On screen, the image faded to black. A final message appeared. "Thank you for 50 years of lessons." No applause followed, only silence, deep, electric, merciful silence. I lifted my glass. "To truth," I said simply, then turned and walked away as the lights came back on. Behind me, whispers bloomed like wildflowers. Richard called my name once, quiet, pleading, but I kept walking. Outside, the night air was cool, the city lights shimmering like a curtain falling at the end of a play. I thought I'd feel broken, but I didn't. I felt free. By morning, the freedom had settled into something quieter. Peace. Richard's apology note lay on the counter beside an empty glass of whiskey. "Elaine, I made a mistake. Please, let's talk." I folded it, placed it inside his briefcase, the same one where I'd found the necklace meant for her, and locked it. That chapter was closed. The phone rang all day. Friends, relatives, neighbors. Some whispered comfort, some curiosity. "You didn't have to do it like that," one said. But I did, because truth deserves light, not whispers. Linda vanished from the neighborhood soon after. Her house darkened, mailbox overflowing. One morning, while pruning roses, I glanced at her yard and felt nothing. Not hate, not triumph, just relief. Richard tried to come back once. He stood on the porch, eyes tired, shoulders sagging. "Elaine, don't do this," he said softly. "We can fix it." I looked at him, really looked, and saw a man I'd already outgrown. "You lost me long before that video," I said. "You just didn't notice." Then I closed the door. Not slammed, closed, because dignity doesn't need noise. Weeks turned to months. The world moved on, and so did I. I filled my mornings with walks, my afternoons with reading, my evenings with peace. I painted again, hosted a small book club for women like me, the kind who'd spent years being quiet. Together we found laughter in the places grief used to live. One evening, my daughter came by. "Mom," she said softly, "I think you're the bravest person I know." I smiled. Bravery isn't loud, I told her. Sometimes it's just choosing yourself when no one else will. That fall, I took a trip, alone, to Savannah, Georgia, the same place Richard once planned to visit with her. I walked under the moss-covered oaks, listened to the river whisper beneath the bridges, and felt the weight of 50 years finally lift. By the water, I whispered a quiet goodbye, not to him, but to the version of me who waited too long to be seen. When I came home, I found the flash drive still in my desk, the one holding the proof of everything. I plugged it in one last time, not to relive, but to release. Then I deleted it. Click. Gone. And with it, every trace of bitterness. That evening, I sat on the porch with a cup of tea as the sun dipped behind the trees. For 50 years, I'd built a life around someone else's story. Now, I was finally living my own. People think freedom comes with noise, with breaking chains and shouts of victory, but mine came quietly, like a breath I'd been holding for decades. I smiled to myself, whispering, after 50 years of being someone's wife, I finally remembered who I am. And for the first time in my life, that was enough.